Back in 2022, I did a video about the 5 best places in France to live. As the boss of an agency covering a large area of France, it's something we quite often asked in the shows and in the comments, where is the best place to live in France? Well, in that video, I chose the 5 best places, but it was very much a personal choice. This time round, I'm going to do it slightly differently, and I'm going to follow the statistics. Or at least follow statistics, how I'd use them, certainly, to choose where I'd be living in France if I was looking in 2025. So let's get into it. But first off, a bit of perspective. The French will always tell you that France is a big country, and admittedly with 213,000 square miles, it is pretty big, well, it's by our standards. That is actually 4 times the size of England. But everything is relative, because admittedly the States are like 16 times bigger than France. In fact, the France, size-wise, is pretty well comparable to Texas. So, it gives you an idea of space. But even then, there's lots of factors to actually consider, so let's get into it. Mainland France is broken down into 12 regions. Well, 13 if you count Corsica. But Corsica is an island in the Mediterranean, and island life is a slightly different kettle of fish, so to speak. The mainland regions are broken down into 96 departments, or counties if you wish. And as you know, Paris is the capital of France. But did you know that it actually has a population of 11 million for just under 1,100 square miles, which is a quarter of the size of New York Metropolitan. And New York Metropolitan's population is 19 million. So a lot more people per square mile, let's say. Following Paris, the size of the towns drops down quite radically. Second and third place in France go to Lyon and Marseille, which are both on about 1.5 million population. Then you have Nice and Lille, which is on about 1 million. And then after that you actually have Toulouse, Bordeaux, Nantes, Lens and Toulon, which all are somewhere between the 500,000 and 1 million mark. So the big urban cities in France are a lot smaller than the stateside, let's say. But hopefully you're not looking for a town property. If so, I can't help you much there. As mentioned in the previous video, I'm not a townie. I actually was born in the countryside, grew up on the Cornish coast and moved to central Brittany at the age of 16. So, you're looking for a rural property? Yes you are, you're looking for a rural property. Obviously, if you're coming from the UK, everyone knows about the ferry ports. I won't linger too long on that side. Different ferry ports all along the coast. But obviously that's to the northern side. Then after that you've got the international airports. On this map here, the red dots are the international airports which fly direct to the States. All the green ones will fly directly to the UK, but also you can get flights from there up to the main ones which fly to the States as well. Then following that, we actually have the rail system in France, which as you can see actually has like a big hole in the southern half and a bit missing on the east. It all seems to be going west and down towards Saint-Tropez, etc. And on a side note, if you actually are thinking about coming over to start a business up over here, here's a quick map from 2019 of the up and coming towns. Haven't found anything more recent than that, but certainly it gives you an idea. So based on that, I'll come up with this map here. Basically the red zones you don't want to be in. It still leaves the white zones at the moment, but we'll be working our way through to actually narrow down where you should be. After that, the next thing to consider is population density. So we have this quite detailed map here, but that detailed map isn't necessarily the clearest. Especially when you look at it initially, you'll think that the darker green areas are the highly populated areas. No, the dark green areas are actually the very low populated areas. It's the red ones which are the higher populated. And on this scale, that means just the main towns. But here's another map, which is more detailed as such. So you can actually see the lesser populated areas obviously in the dark blue. The light blue is fairly unpopulated. Then going through, building up to the red, where it's the most populated areas for you. Another little map I found, which I thought was quite interesting, was this map here, which is the availability of doctors, general practitioners that is. Admittedly, this is quite an old map, 2012, but it's still quite interesting and still quite true, to be honest. Everything's in the red. But the dark red are the better areas for finding a doctor. So based on that maps there, I've actually taken out the higher density areas and the lower density areas, added them onto the actual previous map, and we've come up with this second stage, let's say. Another factor to take into account is the tourism side. Obviously, you don't necessarily want to be where it's really touristy, but at the same time, having tourist activities in your area does keep a flow of people there. So you're not living in the back and beyond. As we go through these maps, you'll find they tend to sort of, I wouldn't say repeat, but they often have the same areas. So I think one thing is due to another, and it's all knock-on effects. But based on this map here, taking off the coastal tourist areas, because basically coastal tourist areas, that's very much just summer. By the same reasoning, taking off the winter tourist zones, as in ski resorts, because yes, there's a bit more life in them in the summer than the coast, let's say, but not that much. So going for the inland tourism areas, I've added that to the map as well, and obviously you can see the area is already starting to narrow down quite a bit. Then another thing which people might be interested in, more than you think, in the sense that actually this is a map of how ecological the departments are. You can see here there's actually the South Brittany coast is very good, down in the Errol and in the Gironde that's very good as well, and up on the north area of France it's not too good. Obviously it's more industrialised up there. So, but that also does not just talk about ecology, it talks about the actual landscape, I suppose, to a certain extent. As I said, up in the north is a lot more industrial, down on the south more countryside. So it plays more on the actual lifestyle more than we think. You don't necessarily have to be an eco fan to actually want to be something ecological. It does have other advantages. Then after that we're going to talk about topography. As you can see here on this map, this is a map showing where the main mountain ranges are. So you've got the Massif Central there in the bottom middle, and then you've got the Alps to the east and the Pyrenees right down on the south on the Spanish border. So, okay, there are some skiing fans out there who would want to be close to that. Obviously, all these maps can be taken and used as you wish to your own advantage, so to speak. But the way I see it, I'm not against skiing, but I don't necessarily want to be living in a ski resort. So, add that to the map, take out the mountains. Now here we're moving on to climate, because obviously the actual mountain map helps on that, because there's mountain climates, there's Mediterranean climates, etc, etc. So look at this climate here, obviously down the south there on the Mediterranean, that is the very hot, dry climate. The mountain climates are very changeable climates. The oceanic climate you can see on the western side there, that is more, let's say, variable in the sense you have higher winds and that sort of thing. And what's marked on this map as climate oceanique altéré, or as the varied oceanic climate, is a more general French climate, let's say, a bit of everything, let's say. But also adding on the hours of sunlight. Obviously, I think everyone would love to have as many hours of sunlight as possible. But obviously, the more sun on this map, the more sunlight areas also corresponds to the heat, the hotter areas as well. It's logical. So, taking all that into account, but adding on another layer, which is the level of rain. As you can see here, down on the Pyrenees, there's quite a bit of rain. There's Western Brittany on the west there is quite a bit of rain, but also along the eastern frontier and in the Massif Central in the middle, southern middle there. And then, to add it, insult to injury, here's the flood zone danger maps. So obviously mainly down on the south or the mountainous regions, but there is also this little area in the middle, which I think is Indre-et-Loire, if my geography is good. And there are areas which are quite open to flooding. So what's something worth thinking about, even if you're a water fan, fishing fan or whatever, flooding areas, don't forget you have problems getting house insurance in those areas, or certainly paying more than normal. And to finish off on the climate one, we actually have the average temperature map here. Nothing really surprising here. The further south you go, the warmer it gets, and the reverse going north. But you can see there's a fairly definite line there, going down from top end of Brittany to central France and back down towards the Mediterranean and across the Mediterranean coast there. Obviously the darker the red, the hotter the area. And if you put all those factors into our map, taking off, for example, the areas where there's too much rain or where it gets too hot, taking away the mountain areas, etc., etc. This is what we're left with at this stage. But let's take it a bit further again, because obviously talking about buying a house, and so one thing comes in which is important is average house prices. So you can see here, you might know I've done a few videos about the different regions and different prices in the regions. This is a general map of France. As you can see, Paris obviously is dark red, that's very expensive. But also down towards the Swiss border, that's expensive. Saint-Tropez, Nice, that's expensive. Then along the actual Western Atlantic coast is quite expensive as well. One of the cheapest areas right in the middle there is a Creuse Limousine area. So things to take into account, that obviously prices do play and do vary from region to region. So pretty well the more inland you go, the cheaper it gets, as a very basic rule of thumb. So we've had that into the mix. Statistically talking, this is what we come up with. This leaves these areas which have a good all-round side to them. Reasonable weather, reasonable travel, reasonable lifestyle, etc., etc. So just to make it a bit clearer, there's green. But let's tidy this up so you get an idea. There you go. These are the counties or departments, as the French call them, which I would be looking in. Saying that though, just a quick mention is actually on these maps I've filled in the whole department itself. I wouldn't be looking within 20 minutes of the coast, because A, price is expensive, but B, there is also coastal erosion in lots of areas. So if you're getting right on the coast, and there is some talk of different areas being quite invaded when they're in the lowlands if the sea does rise enough. As you can see here, there are two distinct zones, north and south, let's say, or north and south-ish. Brittany, Normandy, and part of the Pays de Loire, and then getting down to the top end of the Nouvelle-Aquitaine, going into the lot. If I was looking for a house in France in 2025, these are the actual departments I'd be looking in. Statistically talking, I'll run you through them. I'll put the name up on the screen so you know where you are. So you have Finistère here in Brittany, following on to the Côte d'Amour in Brittany, Morbihan, which is in Brittany as well, and Ille-et-Vilaine. Once again, as I mentioned, those four areas, but more than 20 minutes away from the coast. Then you actually have Le Manche in Normandy, as well as Calvados and Orne. That runs over into the Pays de Loire with Mayenne and Sarthe. Then on the lower half, let's say, you actually have the Deux-Sèvres, the Vienne, the Charente, the Haute-Vienne, which makes me laugh because the Haute-Vienne is actually further south than Vienne itself. So the high Vienne is lower. Now, moving on, then you actually have Corrèze and Dordogne, Lot-et-Garonne, and then finally dropping down into Occitanie in the Lot region. So following the statistics, looking where things are going, where prices are good, where the weather's good, they are the 16 departments I would be looking in, or the two areas, let's say. After that, obviously, it's all down to your own individual choice of what you want. You might want to be a bit closer to the mountains, you might want to be a bit closer to the coast. You might want to be a bit closer to the German border, I don't know, or Switzerland. Obviously, horses for courses, as they say in England. But based on the stats, they would be the best places to be looking in France in 2025. So, hope that helps, and if it does, don't forget to click the old like, subscribe and bell buttons for me, and I'll be back soon with another one.